So I'll call the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Government Commission meeting will come to order. Councillor Benton and Commissioner Smith are excused. Commissioner O'Malley will be late, and Commissioner Quesada will participate via phone. Are you there, Commissioner?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. So next we have is a moment of silence led by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Hart-Stebbins. Thank you, Commissioner. Next, I'd like to welcome Mr. Lawrence Rayal. He's the Chief Operations Officer for the City of Albuquerque. He's here representing the mayor today. Welcome. Want to say a couple words?
Thank you.
Okay. So next item we have is the approval of the minutes. Obviously, we can't do that because we don't quite have a quorum until Commissioner O'Malley arrives. So we will move on to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Good evening. My name is William Hoffman. I represent Albuquerque Interfaith Behavioral Health Initiative Action Team, as well as the North Valley Coalition of Neighborhoods. I represent Vista del Norte Alliance, and I'm here to advocate for three important issues. The first is the concept of a city-county public health department. Many years ago, we had a public health department which was responsible primarily for environmental health. There is a real need now for a joint public health department that addresses behavioral health issues as well as the opioid crisis. Second of all is to advocate support for the mayor's proposal for a triage center. My understanding is that it may become a joint city-county UNM and state initiative. It's an important facet of the behavioral health issues. Finally, City Council Resolution 95, I believe, comes before the City Council on Monday. It asks for support for a State Health Securities Act. I don't know whether we've had one before the county or not. But, and do we have a new commissioner? I'm sorry.
You're very kind, sir, but no, I have been on this board for about 9.5 years now, so.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
And Madam Chair, yeah, there's a new commissioner-elect, but that woman isn't here. Yeah, it's not Commissioner Hart-Stebbins has been here for a while.
Thank you. Anyone else signed up for public comment? That's it. So we will move on to new business. Item 1, Unified City-County Dispatch Discussion. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is something that we've talked about in the past, and we came close to going in that direction, and then we couldn't get a consensus. But so I thought I'd bring it up again. It's always been my belief that the best way to have the city and the county actually able to get the closest unit or most efficient service to people who are in crisis is to have people, both the city and the county dispatchers at the same location, able to actually be looking at the data in real time. So let's see, who do we have? Ms. Yara, who should we start with in terms of having an overview? And really, I don't think I want to do much with this resolution at this point, except just start the discussion, and then we'll defer it. So I see we have some folks from Fire here. Would anyone like to come and start, or do you want to kick it off, Ms. Yara?
Yes, Madam Chair and members. I do remember that the council passed this resolution in FY17, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get everybody on board to complete the study, so it was actually never done, and hopefully we can move forward, and I'll take direction from the council to get that in place.
And there's one bit of, I hope it's good news, I hope it's still the same. I guess the county has a new CAD, is that right? A Motorola? Yes. And the city needs a CAD, but one thing we could do is just expand the Motorola. We could, without having to actually buy our own. Is that something?
That's a possibility. Good evening,
Sure.
councilors. That is a possibility. In talking with the county, the Motorola system, from my understanding, can be expanded to include the city of Albuquerque. Not sure how many spots for PD, excuse me, but on the fire side, my understanding is that it can be done. Now, I'd like to talk to DTI to see how that would work with us and all the security that we have set up to protect our CAD system. So that is one of my concerns that we would need to look at if we were looking at expanding that and also using that in our facility.
But if we were to do a unified dispatch, wouldn't it be ideal to have both the city and the county on the same CAD?
Yes, I don't want to speak for PD, but for fire, it would definitely help. So we had discussed that at one point of possibly taking over the counties on the fire side, and EMS is taking over them, adding another dispatcher in our communications center. This was talked back a year or two ago, and we dispatch for them, and currently we have all of their units in our CAD system. So in order to start that, we could dispatch their units. The problem that we would have is sending the dispatch out to the stations via the station alerting system, which we also have 2 different station alerting systems. But it would be great to be on the same CAD.
Okay. Go ahead. Is there anyone else? And I spoke with the gentleman who's the head of public safety for the county. And initially, we were thinking about just doing the fire, and then there was some suggestion. Well, let's look at police and sheriff too. Let's look at everything. So go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Erica Wilson. I'm the manager for the APD 911 Center.
Okay.
There are multiple layers where different things could be accomplished. One of them would be a CAD interconnect where we share, even though we have separate systems, we share CAD data. The problem is usually both vendors consider their information proprietary and they don't want to release it. A consolidation of a center is a nationwide discussion at any conference that I've gone to. The concerns become financial, and where do we back into if we have a failure? So the state will fund portions of the primary 911 center, but they won't fund anything in relation to a secondary 911 center. We are fortunate that currently the state 911 fund is paying for both police and fire on the Albuquerque side for their telephony equipment, but that's the only portion that the state 911 funds. So it really looks at what level do you want to see consolidation? Do you want to start with a whole building and then build a backup building, and how much money you want to invest?
Well, we already have the buildings, though, right? I mean, if we have a primary or unified dispatch, we could always make it could either be the county, you could use a current county facility and then have the city facility be the backup, or vice versa.
Councilor Harris, that's absolutely correct. The issue then becomes, how are the people trained? If everybody fire is at, let's say, the Holly facility,
Yep.
and all law enforcement is at the Sunset Gardens facility, if I have a fire in Sunset Gardens or an equipment failure, I don't have anybody who's trained in police at Holly to take the calls, and vice versa.
So yeah, there actually has to be some people just sort of sitting around in case something goes very bad.
The cross-trained aspect of it,
cross-trained,
if
okay.
we were to go that route. There are many models. The larger cities tend to have independent centers, police and fire. There are some cities where it's consolidated, where you have one operator that handles both in police and fire calls. So there's many, many layers of a true consolidation that could be looked at, which would probably require an external consultation. And again, depending on what level we want to look at this. Do we want to look at data sharing? Do we want to look at having one center and then finding a backup, so on and so forth?
What if you had a magic wand and you're looking only at public safety?
I'm about 911 regardless of police or fire. So whatever method gets the first responders there quickest, and that the city, the policy, and the union support is what I support. And I'm not trying to be political. I do think a consolidated center is a good idea. There are currently 46 911 funded 911 centers in this state with a 2 million population. If you look in the Phoenix metro area, for example, there are 26 911 centers within the Phoenix metro, which would go from Glendale to Mesa to Apache Junction. But they have places to roll out to. Where if we were to make one unified center where perhaps both sworn fire worked and police dispatchers, we would still need a place to back into. We couldn't throw our calls to Santa Fe or to Sandoval Regional. They just don't have the space or volume for us to move there.
So tell me about Phoenix, what do they do? You said they have 26?
Phoenix, they have 26 911 centers within the metro area. This includes Gilbert, Chandler. Now, that's all law enforcement 911 centers.
Okay.
They have two primary, and I probably shouldn't speak to this, but that's where I came from.
Yep.
They have two primary fire dispatch centers, one in Phoenix and one in Mesa. But if Phoenix goes down, Mesa then takes over, and vice versa. On the police side, the Phoenix Police Department has two separate buildings that they rotate through to keep them both running and functional. So they have two sites that are simultaneously operational.
But I thought they have 26, but two. Which one?
That's in Phoenix, in the Phoenix metro. So Gilbert, Chandler, all the small towns have their own 911 centers as well. They have not embraced consolidation in Phoenix metro yet, except for the fire side.
Oh, so fire's embraced it, but police
Police
is not. Oh, I see.
There has been some data sharing there. Gilbert and Mesa, for example, have a data share of CAD information, but, and so do Phoenix and Mesa. Fire share data, but that's as far as it goes.
In my interest in this is only about public safety, but what I found last time I brought this up, we ran into kind of some issues between intergovernmental concern and authority and who, well, if, you know, because I heard something, Chief, what's your name again? Oh.
Sorry about that. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Deputy Chief Mowry, Head of Communications and Training with Albuquerque Fire Rescue.
Thanks, Chief Mallory. And one thing you said I think might have, doing a little bit more research after this, is that the county was not comfortable with, like, okay, well, let's consolidate, but the city will just take over the county. And then one of the thoughts was, well, let's build a unique third place, which also seemed kind of like a waste. So hopefully we can start working through that. But I mean, what's your, does the APD and Bernalillo County Fire Department, are they still of different views on this, or what's your impression?
As far as I know, with the new administration change and with the previous administration change, I was not in a lot of those meetings that occurred, but I was part of what some of our options were. And like I said, one of the options that we felt was in the best interest of the public was that we have one consolidated dispatch where we dispatch fire and EMS calls. Currently, we take a call and, you know, we have to make sure that the county's available to assist, or if it's in their jurisdiction, then that takes time away from the citizen who needs that help. And that's what we want to do, is eliminate that time lag where it's one center. We don't have to worry about whose jurisdiction it is. We have all the resources in the CAD and we dispatch from there. We could probably save about a minute per call, roughly, depending on the type of call with calling the county if we have something for them, and vice versa. So that's what we were looking at, is they have about 20,000 calls a year, and we're at about 110 this year. So total we'd be about 130,000 calls. So we think that we could, by adding another person in our dispatch center, we could take on that call volume, and we eliminate any back and forth, any lost time transferring calls, depending on how busy they are or we are, repeating the address. All that is wasted time for someone who needs that help, and our goal is to just get emergency responses there in the quickest amount of time for the visitors and the citizens of the Albuquerque area.
Okay. Yeah, that was my concern also. Maybe we could do some sort of study either here or at the council level and actually decide what the best practices are. I'm surprised that Phoenix still has 26. That sounds horribly inefficient, but I mean, how's it working?
Well, I've been here 10 years now.
Yep.
So in still speaking with some of my associates, each agency works on its own island. Some of the law enforcement agencies share information and some do not. So it's functioning. Could it be more functional? Certainly.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to find out what the best practices are. Is there someone, and Chief, Chief Geyer, what are you thinking in terms of the APD and the BCSO side?
Well, Councilor Harris, I saw it in Sandoval County, the regional dispatch. I think they had 13 different entities on that particular, at that center. I think there's a great possibility for us to be more efficient. There are still calls in, not so much the East Mountains, but in the areas of the South Valley and North Valley and up by the Northeast Heights area where an address will come in and it will show as a county address or an Albuquerque address, and really it's vice versa. And so, as the Deputy Chief referred to, there is a delay in response. And for us, generally, we'll have a closer response time because we have more concentrated number of officers in each area command, but it could be, beneficial for the county to have us as well. But on radio operability, we have that interaction already where we can go into a channel and dispatch, request assistance from them. But the CAD systems is different because it comes in through a 911 or through a phone center. So I'm for it. I think it would be, I know they're short-staffed at the center, and sometimes 911 calls take a while to answer and get dispatched just because of that, and we know we have people working double shifts there. If we can make it more efficient using both resources from both entities, the county and the city, I think it would work well.
Okay. I don't know if any other councilors or commissioners want to visit about this.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've always believed that when it comes to public safety, there should be no boundaries. But I've been at this for a long time now. When I was serving in the Bernalillo County Commission, I tried to get the city and the county to put together a CAD system that would work for all residents of both Bernalillo County and the city of Albuquerque. Well, here we are 20 years later still talking about the same issue. And I don't see any representatives here from Bernalillo County tonight. I don't see the sheriff here or the fire chief from Bernalillo County. So I'm not sure what's going on there, if you guys have communicated. But I know it's going to be a challenge. It's been a challenge, for 20 years. But if we can save the taxpayers money and be more efficient and provide the services, that's all they want. I mean, I think their concern is, if it's a county truck, a city truck, or a fire chief, or, for the fire department or the police department or the county sheriff's department, they just want to get that response done as quickly as possible. When they're calling 911, they don't care if it's county or city. They just want a response. And if it's a priority one call, they want to be protected as quickly as possible. But again, I'm not sure why the county, can anybody answer that question? Why there's no representatives here from Bernalillo County tonight, the sheriff or any of the fire chief, deputy chief?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, I know that the fire chief is out of town, so I know that he wanted to be here, but and I think he'll be back tonight or tomorrow. He'll be back tomorrow. And as far as the sheriff, I don't know, but well, that's basically my answer. And as the county manager, I'm happy to look into it, look into a study, and really we should be doing what's best for the community. So,
thank you.
Mr. Raya.
Madam Chair, and maybe I might suggest to Councilor Harris and for all of us here that it might be helpful before we spend a little bit of money looking at a third-party consultant to come and have a conversation about this, that it might be helpful if the mayor's office and the council, along with the county manager, maybe get together and have a conversation about how we might move this issue forward. In many cases, for example, as you mentioned, Councilor Sanchez, back when I was CAO back in the 90s, we were doing this. And we got pretty close, but it didn't quite get there. It seems to me that just from a really high-level perspective, that there's probably a lot more compatibility in doing this on the fire side, because I think that they have a lot more of a connection with the systems because of how they respond for the areas that they work on. The police and the sheriff's issues are a little more complicated. Not only is it the issues associated with addresses, both in the incorporated and unincorporated areas of the county, but the call volumes are just so significantly different. and the protocols that need to be put together to deal with those. So those, I think, are probably a little longer lead time in moving that, but I think it's got to be done from, in many, I think in this particular case, from both the city and the county leadership at the management administration level to move it forward before we spend a lot of time. Because you end up with the consultant coming in and telling you this is the way they do it in other parts of the country, but it's all going to come down to one basic relationship issue, and that is, can we make it happen here, and how can we get the politics sorted out? And then once the politics is sorted out, these folks are professionals. They'll figure out how to get it done. And maybe that's when the consultants come in and say, look, these are the models that are being used in other parts of the country. So I would just make that suggestion, but it is probably in the best interest of both the city and the county that at least we start moving and having the discussions in earnest about how we make this work together for everybody.
Mr. Ayala, I would echo what you're saying. I think just having the discussion to see if it's even feasible moving forward and see what the will of both bodies are. My issue with it is I think maybe sometimes the word consolidation just scares everyone. I don't know if that's kind of the word that needs to be said moving forward in terms of, it's just really, how do you create that partnership with both entities? Because it may not even be the consolidation of people, it may be just the consolidation of software and how we respond to things. So, you know, I just think that having the discussion moving forward would be helpful, and whether it's just fire and whether it's both. But I really, and maybe I can ask that question to the 911 director, is our software already compatible, the CAD, all that? Does it already communicate? Because I know oftentimes those are some of the biggest obstacles we have, is kind of the IT side of it.
Chairman Pena, the CAD systems are two different vendors. They are not connected to each other, and they don't speak with each other. The telephone systems are different, although the 911 network is the same, and both sides are on the same radio system. So there are some aspects that are shared and others that are not. When we explored sharing the CAD information prior, it involved a third party building software so they could speak to each other, and the two vendors declined because their products were proprietary. But that's been several years ago. It doesn't mean it could not be revisited.
Thank you, and I think maybe that's, again, you know, not so much the consolidation of people, but the consolidation of our information and how we utilize it. I used to work for a nonprofit that, you know, when we used to have to do our reporting to the state of New Mexico, each of our different programs that we had to report to different software systems that didn't communicate with each other, so everybody was operating in silos, and it really hurt us in terms of really garnering and gathering all the information that was going to help us to move forward in terms of helping the people that we were serving. So thank you, I appreciate it. And I just wanted to add, we have Deputy Chief Commander Bañez here, and I just want to say I think you're doing a phenomenal job downtown. I know you were our commander in the Southwest area, and you're modeling some of that after the community policing we were doing over there. And I look forward to working with you on some West Central issues to really enhance that, what you're doing downtown. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Stebbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we leave this topic, so this issue of interoperability has been around for a long time. I think 10, maybe many years ago, when I was working for Mr. Rael at the Mid-Region Council of Governments, there were conversations about how interoperability had to be implemented around the country. And every time I come to one of these meetings and we have this discussion, I hear, well, Motorola and Tiburon, they won't do it. Well, is there the possibility that as the county moves forward, as the city moves forward, that become a requirement of signing a contract with both of these companies, that this be part of the contract?
I don't see why it couldn't be. We've been with our CAD system, how long has it been? March 2008. So in building a new CAD, it takes many years to get that prepped for both police and fire. So it's difficult, and a lot of the fear, like like Council Pena said, is the fear of kind of moving things over and having that difficulty doing that. It's there. One of the third-party vendors called Fat Pot, we had talked to them And that was an option, and of course, they promised the world when we were talking to them of, we can get both of these to do it, and we can move forward with it. And that was part of the conversation also when all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, it had a full head of steam, and then all of a sudden, I kind of got a deal of, don't worry about researching much anymore into it. It's a dead issue as of now. So we did have that conversation with that third-party company. At that point, they said that they could get it done. Now, being a salesman, you know, you'd like to trust them, and you know, and we're researching to see if they had done that before between a Tiburon and a Motorola company. That way, we could look at them and call them and ask them, how did it work? What are your positives? What are your negatives? How much did it cost you up front? How much did it cost you in fees annually to maintain this service? So I believe it could be done, and I believe it should be done.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask the county manager, when was the last time that the county renewed its contract with Motorola?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Stebbins, I don't know. I think it was pretty recently, but I can find out. I'm happy to find out.
Do you have any idea how much we pay for that every year?
I can find out. I don't know.
Because my recollection is it's a pretty substantial
It is.
amount of money, and I don't know why both local governments wouldn't make that a requirement moving forward, because, again, to say the software is proprietary, I get that, but we're paying them millions of dollars. We're the client. It seems that might be a consideration moving forward, whether we stay with this company or not. You know, we have made little incremental steps forward. You know, we now have closest station response. That took about 3 years for that agreement to come together. I know Councilor Sanchez was part of that conversation. You know, this concept of closest unit response still makes a lot of sense from a public safety point of view, from our constituents' point of view. And, you know, to have these, you know, to continue to hear, well, you know, our vendors won't support this effort just really doesn't make sense to me as the customer, that maybe perhaps we can set a higher standard moving forward. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So the discussion will continue. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Harris.
And something which is related, I think, and I'm not sure if you spoke about this at a meeting I didn't attend, but I know Commissioner Smith, he was talking to me about something to do with interoperability, similar with regard to the radios. Have we talked about that yet? Or we need to?
The $30 million.
Oh, yeah, so what is that about? Because maybe, I mean, but because if that was his, you know, if that's something that he was carrying and now he can't carry it anymore, you might want to, if it's in a public interest, to keep considering it. I'm kind of wanting to know where are we?
Madam Chair, Councilor Harris, we have been working on the land mobile radio project for quite some time, even during the prior administration. So we're looking at about roughly $30 million. And we had contacted the city we're working together on an RFP. And I know that the county so far has committed $1.5 million to the project. You know, I know it's a small change compared to the 13. Our shares is 13, the city's is 17. And so, and we're just kind of waiting to see how the city wants to move forward. But I understand that the mayor is going to, along with the city, we're wanting to go to the legislature and see if maybe the state can help us out as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rao.
That's correct, Madam Chair and Councilor Harris. I think that the issue for us is the cost of the system is pretty significant. Looking to the legislature to see if they can be helpful in helping us maybe get out some money to help create a system that is compatible so that we can have a system that's countywide. And so we're in the process of, obviously, as the county manager said, of working with the county to put the RFP together and get that piece of it going, but obviously it always comes down to dollars, and so we'll be working on that, so just for the information.
Thank you, Mr. Rael. Councilor Harris, anything else?
No, Madam Chair, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you again. So next item we have is item 2. It's a study of future regional indoor youth sports facility presentation. Commissioner Hart-Stebbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to request a deferral on this to the next meeting. There is a study in process looking at the need for a indoor sports facility that is not yet complete. I was hoping it would be available tonight, but it's not, so if we could defer that to the December meeting, I would ask for us to do that. I move that we defer until the December meeting.
There's a motion, a second for deferral. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. So next item we have is old business. Item A, continuing behavioral health initiative action discussion. Katrina Hotram. And first item we have is status update and direction going forward.
Thank you. We've had a lot of action that has happened over the last couple of weeks, and most recently, I think you all know that we have passed at the Bernalillo County Commission only because we had missed an ABCGC meeting, and we felt like it was really important to move some items forward. We had passed 3 proposals that I've talked about before, but I will go ahead and reiterate a little bit tonight. The first proposal was on suicide prevention. That's a $1 million investment annually, and that will go out to RFP probably sometime in the new year. But the intent of that is that when we started looking at the data and wanted to really invest in schools and find out what's really going on, and looking at what we could do in terms of the behavioral health effort, the data shows that between the ages of 10 and 47 here in New Mexico, that's the second leading cause of death is suicide. So we decided that suicide prevention was where we needed to invest our dollars, really focusing not just on the individual that has the suicide, but also tendency, but also the family members, in order for them to be educated on how to support them and get through the process as well. Are there any questions on that proposal? The second proposal is on is something called LEAD, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. The Bernalillo County received a grant recently in the amount of $50,000 in order to start a LEAD project and program, and that really is where we work with law enforcement officers, the district attorney's office, and other criminal justice partners in order for us to identify the certain types of charges when the officer is out on the streets that they would be able to say, okay, either I take you to jail or you get treatment. And so we have been working on this through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and we decided not to leave that as $50,000, but invest more in that. We've been taking a lot of direction from Santa Fe, who has the second leading LEAD program, or second oldest LEAD program in the country, and they have had a lot of successes with this program and with diversion. And so we didn't want to limp along with one case manager, which is what this would pay for, but more case management, offer training, and be able to help guide and provide a comprehensive system that would support this LEAD program. So we'll be working on that in the new year. Don't see this as going out to request for proposal process. We see this more as in-house and hiring case managers to work with officers in order to make sure that we're making the linkages and the connections as needed. Are there any questions on that? Okay. So the final one is really expanding the behavioral health crisis service delivery system. This is something that we've all been waiting for. We have been working diligently with the University of New Mexico Hospital to really talk about what crisis looks like in the future and what they can have on their blueprint, what they can do with their psychiatric service center today or in the near future, and what we could possibly do on the MATS campus in the near future that helps with the stabilization for mental health and also do more on that addiction treatment service piece. So that was a $3 million investment. 1.5 would go to the MATS campus and to Bernalillo County in order to staff up and have room and board on the MATS campus so that we can provide that stabilization. We would also employ EMTs in order to expand our medical parameters and criteria on that campus so that we can relieve hospital congestion for individuals who have a mental health issue, have a co-occurring issue, or a substance abuse issue. We will be able to treat individuals who are more complex than we are able to on this campus. The next thing that does is it allows the University of New Mexico to take over the medical direction on that campus as a whole. And that's where the other $1.5 million comes into effect. And so what that would do is we've listed ourselves as payer of last resort because most of these clients are on Medicaid. And so UNM will bill Medicaid first, and the 1.5 would help pay for some doctor fees and for some uncompensated care as well. They would also handle and manage our pharmacy or medical delivery service, and so people could actually get more medications than what they're getting now. What we're seeing on that campus now is that people have a chronic disease such as hypertension and diabetes, and we will actually be able to treat them rather than sending them back to the hospital so we can stabilize them. Plus, then we will have a medication regimen for individuals who are stabilizing in our facility who need psychiatric medications. So the third component to that would be eventually an outpatient clinic that would be happening on the MATS campus that would also provide medication-assisted treatment. And then the fourth piece would be the actual building that's on the footprint of the UNM site that would be a crisis triage center. And what our proposal is also going to be is that we invest up to $30 million in a building to be able to support that concept at UNM on their campus. But that's way in the future, and we can put a lot of these pieces together now.
Any questions? Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what's important to note is that this triage center, which we're looking at in the future, we had mentioned up to $30 million. This in terms of our capacity, right? In terms of capital capacity at this point. But it does not preclude us from having other partners in this build out and in working together. The idea, I guess, UNM is to be the agency that would operate something like this. But I think that's really important, that we leverage as much as we can and that we look for partners. I know that the city has been interested in, it's interesting, that it seems like there's a lot of capital around, but not a lot of operating. And we are fortunate that this tax that we are able to use is very flexible in terms of operating capital. So I just want to make sure that, since we have city folks here, that that door is open as an opportunity, I think, for us to work together as well as the state to have a facility that, that we can all support, because it will serve all the people in this county. Thank you.
Well, Katrina, I just want to add, you've been doing a lot of things at the county in terms of the behavioral health, and I just really want to add that these three kind of are what are most exciting to me, because I have a frustration of the system and how it operates again in silos. And if somebody goes to the UNM Psychiatric Center, that's all they treat them for. If they have a substance abuse issue, well, too bad, so sad, right? And so this really creates that linkage between when they're releasing them from the psych center because they're not having a mental health issue, then they just send them out on the street. This way it creates that opportunity for us not to lose that person and to get them the additional help for their substance abuse issue. I just think it's just so awesome. And with the police department, we're incarcerating especially young minority men of color and women that are going to jail for some minor offenses that really need some important help, and either substance abuse or they have mental health issues, and to get them to the right place is paramount to me. I know we all keep talking about the triage center, and I think it's important. I think it's kind of the end of the road thing to really help, but creating these linkages, I've said it before, if we build a triage center and we don't have an avenue to get these people there, then what for have that center there? So thanks for all that work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item is that we have is the opportunities for subcommittee members to address the commission. Do we have any of the subcommittee members here
I
this
think
evening?
we burnt them all out in our steering committee today, so they've all gone home. But we'll make sure they're at our next meeting.
Okay, well, just again, we just really appreciate their work, and I know they're getting ready for Thanksgiving too. I can't believe it's next week. So, okay, Katrina. Mr.
Madam Chair, may I just say that after reading this morning's Albuquerque Journal, and I'm sure all of you read that, just compliment Katrina and the county for, I thought the Journal did a really nice job laying out the work that the county commission did as it relates to behavioral health care. Last night, I think it was your commission meeting, or I think, was it last night or the night before? But the case is that it gave us at the city a really good understanding of how these programs are working, et cetera. And we had a nice conversation before this meeting with Commissioner Stebbins and the county manager and Katrina and her staff. And I just want to say that congratulations. I think that is moving the program in the right direction. And to Commissioner O'Malley's comment earlier, we want to partner with the county on these issues. These issues of behavioral health care in particular, and even homelessness, have no boundaries. I mean, it's all about the residents of Bernalillo County, which include the city of Albuquerque. And we just want to make sure that we are able to maybe begin to do a better partnership. We need the county's help as much as the county needs our help. And I think saying that and working through that is important. And so I just want to say that Commissioner O'Malley and to the county that we want to work with you all to make sure that what you all are doing it fits hand in glove with what we want to do on the homeless issues, and see how we can find some common ground to make life better for everyone in this county. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner.
I want to personally also thank you, Katrina, and also Margarita, for coming out to the west side and meeting with me on this very critical and important issue. We are heading towards the ultimate goal, which is the triage center. But I want to thank the task force also for their work. I mean, they've done some remarkable work, and you've taken a lot of their input and advice, and you've presented it to this board. But I think working together on this issue is going to be important. Again, we need to collaborate and be united on many of these fronts, because again, public safety has no boundaries. But working together, I really want to thank you for all your work. It seems like it's taken a long time, but a lot of work has been done over the last 2-3 years, and thank you for all your work. Margarita, thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, we have the report on City of Albuquerque Behavioral Health Initiatives. Ms. Carol Pierce, Director of Family and Community.
Thank you, Chair Pena and council members. I have a report tonight on many things, but I think to build on the report we just heard, just to acknowledge our collaboration with the county with our single site supportive housing. We're really excited. I think many of you know that the development agreement for that went to City Council recently. It passed with a 9-0 vote. We're very excited about that. And that came after a lot of work with our developer, Yes Housing, our neighborhood associations, to really make sure it was going to work for everyone. But that is a really great example of the county and the city working together, also leveraging money from MFA to really address a critical need of 42 folks with permanent supportive housing who have been homeless and have behavioral health needs. We're very excited. I think that's a shining star for all of us, the city, county together. Very excited to see that move forward. And those are the kinds of projects that actually we need more of. This is a great start. Wanted to let everybody know, and I think you knew that the mayor did announce on Monday we opened our West Side emergency housing early with the cold snap that we had. It was the right thing to do. Normally it would have been opening today. So on Monday night, about 148 men, women, and children were picked up and spent the night out at our West Side shelter. So the one thing that we know, and as we said, that homelessness and behavioral health has no bounds, it affects all of us, and that we need to continue to work together as a community with our partners in the county, critical, UNM, CNM, to address the needs of homeless people in our community. And one of the things that the county's doing already that's very helpful is with supportive housing. So as we know, part of why we are calling our West Side Emergency Housing Center emergency housing is because that's what it is. And it opens that back door to get into more housing. And the county already does quite a bit on supportive housing vouchers as well as the crisis stabilization and intervention. That is critical to address the needs of homeless people. So we also want you to know that as we open the shelter, we will house roughly about 300 folks a night. You know, it will ramp up here as we get going. But on any given night, there are about 350 to 750 people unsheltered every night. And it depends on whether the shelter's open or not. And you might ask, okay, if we have roughly 350 people, where are those other several hundred folks? They choose not to go to the shelter. It may be many reasons. What I observed on Tuesday night, I wanted to see how Harada Transportation gets folks out there, went to Coronado Park. Away biked the gentleman with his dog. So he probably did not want to lock up his bike somewhere and lose his bike, which was his core means of transportation, nor do we have a place for his dog, maybe one of his very, very important to him. But we also, folks, if they have cars, and sometimes homeless people do have cars, and that's where they're living when they don't have any other shelter. They don't want to park their car and leave their car. Some people are afraid. We've tried to do a good job of letting people know they're safe and they're warm in the shelter, but some people are afraid because of maybe past experience. We tried to counteract that this year. We did a film and worked with APD. It's also been shared with Albuquerque Fire and Rescue of a video showing the shelter, talking about where we have shelter for families, where we have shelter for men, where we have shelter for women, so people and our law enforcement officers and fire officials could get the sense of what's happening out there, because they typically aren't taking people out there because it's way too far. It's 20 miles outside of town. So we hope that by them seeing that video, it might help as they're interacting with homeless individuals, help them, let them know it's a safe, secure place to go. So as we've opened up the shelter, the pickups are at Coronado Park 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. After that, there is an emergency van that is cruising around town up until 11:30 p.m. And our law enforcement and ERs, they do have a special number if they're needing to get somebody out there, and that van can take them out there. So in order to address the need, I think we've been talking about this in my prior time coming to the council, we do want to convert that to year-round. Historically, for the last 12 to 15 plus years, open November 15th, close March 15th. We know that's not working for our community. So when March 15th comes around, we do not want to close the shelter. We want to keep it open to give people the safe place to be. What we also want to do is roughly that shelter's open about 15 hours a day. If you count when people get picked up and they go out there, they're there all night. Starting at 6 a.m., they're bringing folks back because children need to get to school, people need to get to jobs, and they need to also get food at one of our with one of our community partners. But when March 15th rolls around, we do not want to close it. But what we do want to do is expand also on Saturdays and Sundays. There's a gap in services then. There are some meals available. It's not as much as Monday through Friday, and we think that will be a benefit for our community if we can also rally the resources to expand those hours on Saturday and Sunday and to not close down on March 15th. But again, collaboration with the county is critical to achieve this goal. And as the center increases, we just know there will be more of a need to coordinate those housing resources that the county already does, and also behavioral health services. So we are asking Bernalillo County to help us address these needs. As Mr. Rael mentioned, we met with Manager Baca as well as colleagues here in the county to talk about those needs. So we are grateful for the partnership, and what I'd like to hand out is, we do have a document, it's a preliminary document to show what the future site needs to look like. So we're doing our best with a facility 20 miles outside of town. Our transportation costs are huge. Our contractor heading home last year used some old school buses that we rallied. Those weren't working this year, so we did a contract with Herrera Transportation to provide that. It costs our community a lot to do that. So in future years, we would like to have that more centrally located. And the document that I'm passing out is just describing what some of those services that we need for the shelter. But I want to make one very important correction that as I was listening to Ms. Holtram speak about the second to last paragraph, when I mentioned that it's important as we have emergency housing or the shelter needs to be in close proximity to the proposed behavioral health crisis triage center. That's the county's behavioral triage. We are not proposing a separate one. It's to show that connection back to what the county's doing. I've just omitted the word county there, and I wanted to be really clear. And I think what was a really important part of our conversation earlier with Manager Baca and Ms. Holtram and Mr. Rael is that we're creating a system. We do have a system already, behavioral health system, we've got our homeless system, and we do interact. And we're working to make sure that system is even more comprehensive to meet those needs here in the future. And I stand for any questions that you may have.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and perhaps also, you know, if the CEO, Mr. Rael, would want to weigh in as well. Obviously, you know, this is the jail, the old jail, and it's a big building, and
yeah.
But I mean, you mentioned the challenges of it being so far away.
Yes.
It's 20 miles away.
Yes.
And so you're trying to bring a lot of services to this, but so what is a realistic, you know, plan to bring something like this into this centralized location? Obviously, you know, a lot of people don't want this facility next to them, but I mean, that's the challenge of every facility. Heading home, one is the men's shelter, and it's over there off of Candelaria, and one of the first things the neighborhood did oppose it at one time. In fact, they had, there was $850,000 that was locked up that would not, they couldn't, the folks who wanted to do the shelter couldn't access until they met with the neighborhood, and there was some issues around security. Well, now they have a lot of support because they dealt with security issues, and I think that's a big concern to people. But this isn't really sustainable to have a shelter 20 miles out. It just isn't. So what kind of investment, you know, you're going to make a big investment in a shelter like that, and in terms of services, I understand, you know, is there anything else that is closer in terms of a building or a facility that's closer in? You know, that the city can either acquire, or I'm just curious about that because it's needed. We do need a shelter. I'm not saying we don't, but you know, so those, you know, I'm not privy to your conversation, so I don't know. But I think that's a question some people would like to have the answer to.
Madam Chair and Commissioner O'Malley, you're absolutely right. The West Side facility is a facility that is obviously a lot more cost to the city or to all of us, just because of the distance and where it's located. You're also right, as a former city councilor and county commissioner, how difficult it is to site these facilities in a already developed area of the city. I think there's also so that's one issue that we're working through and that we need to continue to evaluate. We looked at many facilities that we felt might be appropriate for this type of facility, you know, as we've been discussing the opening of the shelter. And the fact is that it's pretty clear that we have the opening of the shelter and have been using the shelter for the last, I don't know how many years, is because we can't find one in town that is available to house these individuals, even on a short-term basis, which is the 3 months in the wintertime. But I'm hopeful that we can work together collectively to find an opportunity, and maybe it's not just one facility, maybe it's multiple facilities throughout the community that create a systems approach. But I do think that Director Pierce made an important comment, and that is, and I know that we've talked to with the county folks, and that is that creating a facility or putting a facility where the triage programs are and when the hospitals are so that we can create a system is really crucial, because what you'll find is that if we can put these anywhere that we can site them, if the systems are so far away from the services that folks need, I mean, one thing is to find a place where they can sleep at night and stay warm at night. But the other bigger issue is all the other supportive services that they need, whether it's addiction issues, whether it's behavioral health care issues, or what have you. We've got to find a place where we can triage them, deal with those, and hopefully get them referred so that ultimately we can move them from a situation of being homeless to potentially maybe having a voucher and having a place to live. So the West Side facility for us is our short-term, if you will, interim solution perhaps, to begin to look at how do we create the model and how do we, and give us an opportunity, give us, when I say us, the county and the city, an opportunity to co-locate facilities maybe within an area of the city so that we can begin to set up the real system that we want. Because even if today, if we had all the money to put this together, we're still at least 3 years away from actually constructing it, building it, siting it. So this gives us a way to deal with the issue now and start addressing the issues. It's not ideal, we will all admit that. If you have a facility in mind, we'd be happy to hear that. But we are trying to begin to address this issue. And as Director Pierce said, I want to be real clear. The mayor and I visited this morning, and he said, look, we need the county's help because you all are the experts in providing some of the behavioral health care services. You all know the system probably better than we do at the city. That was part of our conversation this evening, is seeing how do we work with the county to make it work. We're all in this together, and we want to make sure that you all know that we're opening the shelter because we obviously have a need now, but I do believe we all could agree that we have a long-term need to deal with homelessness, and how we move that forward is really dependent on all of us here to see how we work together to make that happen.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you. I think that, I was basically also just, asking questions I think that the public might want to also hear about. And I agree, this is a population that is very difficult to serve and is very difficult to cite. I mean, we've had, in terms of services, so folks, this is a population too that's totally misunderstood in many cases. People don't, if you listen to the stories of some of these folks, it's a range of issues, total range, and some people who just are having a difficult time for the short time, or all of a sudden something happens financially or whatever. It's just, it's everything. And so, and I agree that, we need to take care of the issues right away. I agree with that. And I agree that we need to work together on this issue. And I think that for a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of the feeling is, or different areas of the city is, and not so much, I mean, we'll just use sort of like the whole issue with the waste transfer station. It's like, we're going to put everything right here. We're going to take every, and people, I don't want to equate that, but the people, they're concerned about population, like I said, that they fear and they don't understand. And so I think a lot of folks think, well, if we're going to look at multiple shelters, we should look at siting them around, which I'm not opposed to. Even we have a shelter down the street on Candelaria. That's the shelter that's close to, not very far from my house. Yes. And it's well run, and it's secured. There's never been any security issues, so I think you can demonstrate that. So as I'm certainly concerned about this, and however, we can work together, I'm happy to do that as well. Thank you.
Chair Pena and Commissioner O'Malley, thank you for the comments and questions. I did want to cite for Albuquerque Opportunity Center, the site on Candelaria. I think in sites like that, we have learned so much, just as you cited. And it's been successful because they did listen to the neighborhood, and part of what makes that successful, there are certain hours people access. So they're not there all the time. And I think if you look at Barrett House, when I visited Barrett House, which, you know, it's kind of in the heart of the Northeast Heights, they did an excellent job of engaging the neighborhood and also adjusting hours, because for a while they needed to adjust the hours so the women could get back there and get their shelter, but also go out in the community. So it is, for better or for worse, we've got the site 20 miles outside of town, but I think as we open it 365 days a year to meet a need, offer some services out there, but also bring people back in town to get connected, it's moving in the right direction. And as I cited in the beginning, I think we should all be so proud as the community with our single site. I mean, our Wells Park neighborhood, the near North Valley, they worked hard to make that work for them, work for the developer. Nobody got everything they needed, but it is such a giant step in the right direction. So I think we've got good models that we can build on, because I agree, it won't necessarily be easy, but as I had one neighborhood member tell me that lives downtown, when she was asking me what we're thinking, she said, well, I've got folks, either they can be in my business sleeping right here or sleeping behind my house in the alley, so you all might as well figure it out because they're sleeping right here where, you know, where I'm trying to operate a business. So I look forward as we work together to figure it out.
Thank you, Director Pierce. Appreciate it. Next item we have is approval of the behavioral health single-site multi-family permanent support housing proposal. It says is deferred on my memo, but that's something that we need to defer. We need to take that action today? Yeah? Okay. So I move deferral of this item. Deferral. Yeah, it's for deferral. Yeah. There's a motion second for deferral. All those in favor say yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item we have is the Behavioral Health Initiative video presentation. Katrina Holtram.
Thank you. And this we'll be passing out popcorn and blankets. This is about a 45-minute video, so just get comfortable. No, I'm teasing. It's a 6-minute video, and it really describes the Behavioral Health Initiative. And I think, you know, we've done this.
We want butter on the popcorn.
We've done this as sort of an overall of what we're doing in terms of behavioral health, but in terms of each of the subcommittees, in terms of prevention, housing, crisis, and community supports, we plan on doing videos that capture everything of what we're doing. So,
I should have brought that holding candy that you got stuck with.
I ended up just drinking every single day. It really exaggerated the fact that I was depressed. I was drowning out a bunch of things that happened to me as a child. I was pronounced dead like 2 years ago from an overdose, and I was brought back to life. So I feel like there's a reason why I'm here. I always cut the fat off.
25-year-old Josh is in a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program at Bernalillo County's Metropolitan Assessment Treatment Center, or MATS.
Before I checked in, October 24th, I was sleeping under the coal bridge. And for me, that was a lonely feeling.
For the first time in a long time, Josh is feeling confident about breaking out of the cycle he's been living.
I've acquired a sense of hope through God and through this program. And all I can do is keep pushing forward.
In 2014, voters in Bernalillo County overwhelmingly approved the behavioral health tax that stands to collect about $17 million a year.
The Behavioral Health Initiative is about creating a network of services that support those in our community who have a behavioral health condition. So regardless of where they are in terms of their diagnosis, they need support, resources, and health care throughout their journey.
We believe that this is a very important initiative because it really speaks to what we need to be doing in the community to address both mental health issues, which affect criminal behavior, it affects how often we're going in and out of emergency rooms, it affects poverty, it touches everything that we do.
Whoops, I don't have it on. Takes better pictures if you turn it on. I have bipolar disorder, which means I have bipolar 2, so I have hypomania and serious depression.
Susan Page was diagnosed with depression 29 years ago following the sudden death of her infant son.
I was already very depressed. He was barely 4 months old, and I just was not doing well at all. My mother was a very critical person. She had been essentially raised by wolves and did not know how to be a loving parent. And my sisters and I are all pretty screwed up as a result. My father was an alcoholic, and so I did not get good parenting growing up.
Despite everything Susan's dealt with, she's resilient. As a retired district attorney, wife, and mother, she stays active. She is also part of the Behavioral Health Initiative, serving on a subcommittee. And when she isn't generously donating her time to causes close to her heart, you can find her snapping photographs, taking art lessons, meeting with friends, and writing poetry.
It's called Character from California Boat Names. I am an instigator. I grab life with gusto, sow seeds of gratitude. And that was the 3 boat names: instigator, gusto, and gratitude.
We have started programs to prevent adverse childhood experiences that lead to behavioral health issues in adulthood.
Things like divorce in your family, abuse, a family member going to jail or leaving for incarceration for a long period of time. When you have that community action at the very beginning, it's very important to keep that motivation going by making sure that you have the community participate in the services that need to be developed.
Like services offered by PB&J Family Services, where they're under contract with the Behavioral Health Initiative to reduce trauma through a program called ACEs.
I actually used to go to Peanut Butter and Jelly when I was a kid. So when I had the option to do parenting classes there and get her involved in there, I took that option right away because I love that place.
Jasmine grew up in a household where both her parents struggled with drug abuse.
My mom and dad were both in and out of jail. We actually got involved with the program because my grandma didn't drive. My grandma adopted us and she didn't drive. So they would pick us up and take us to the jail to go see our mom on family day.
2 little monkeys swinging from a tree.
The exact type of situation the BHI program ACEs is now helping families and children work through, like Jasmine, who also fell into the cycle of addiction.
I was trying to get clean by myself, and she got into my purse and got a hold of a Suboxone. So they ended up taking her away from me, and I lost everything when I lost her.
But today, Jasmine and her daughter Audrina are together and are both benefiting from these supportive services through PB&J.
Felicia is now my counselor. She did so much just to get me back on my feet.
Jasmine looks forward to regular meetings with Felicia, whether it's parenting classes or weekend outings.
They become family. You grow relationships with them and you become family with them, and they're just amazing people.
3 different life stories, all overlapping with the Behavioral Health Initiative and making our community a better, safer, healthier place to live.
Our goal is to create a system in our community where no one falls through the cracks and everyone who needs support gets it.
To date, 14 programs have been created, from housing to crisis services. Thousands of people are now receiving support and treatment through Bernalillo County's BHI.
We're changing lives.
We're changing lives.
We're changing lives.
We're changing lives.
That's the end of the commercial.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Sorry, I'm tired. Is there any other questions? Yes.
No.
Yes. We have it on looped.
Thank you.
Only if you bring the popcorn.
Do you have any services for public service officials?
Did you need one after seeing the video?
Thank you, Katrina. So next item we have is item B. It's an update on the IGA between the city, county, and APS, and Ms. Yara is going to present on that.
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the commission, I'm happy to report that we've made some progress on the IGA. I was told that the county commission did approve a resolution and we have their signatures on the agreement. It's now on the city side. the city council meeting on Monday will have the agenda item to approve the agreement, and then it will go to our legal team to get all the signatures. After that point, we just need to get the signatures and buy-in from APS, and the agreement will be executed.
Thank you, Ms. Yara, and I know we have a guest in the audience. It's Dr. Piercy. If you want to come up and say a few words on behalf, he's the president of the APS board. So welcome, Dr. Piercy.
Well, thank you, and it was good to listen to all the behavioral health stuff. We have a lot of issues there, so. But yeah, relative to this resolution, really appreciate what's being done for you all, and I think it's going to be a great collaboration. I know we have APS's support, so I look forward to the city's support, and if we can be of any help in any of that aspect, please give me a call. I'm looking forward to the collaboration. You know, I just think having all of our agencies really work together and look and solve problems is the right way to do it. So thank you. And I thank Stephen Casada. He's a good friend of mine, of course. He's on the phone. He hasn't said a word. I'm not sure he's on the phone still, but
I've heard a yes here and there.
You heard it, okay. But he's a good friend and, of course, former board member, and so we really appreciate all this action. So thanks much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Piercy. And yes, we do have, myself and Commissioner Quesada have moved this forward. So Commissioner, did you want to add anything?
He's no longer on the line.
Oh, he's not.
Here he is.
I got hung up on?
Commissioner, yeah, we got disconnected.
So, did you want to add anything, Commissioner?
No, I'm just happy that everybody is very supportive of this. It's going to be a great collaboration. Like I said the other night at our meeting, that APS is also an elected board, and they deal with a big budget, and everything that goes through our community is dealt with through at the school level. And so when it comes from what we talked about tonight on the behavioral health, and also on construction and infrastructure and development, all of that comes into play when we talk about that in the community, and all affects APS. So I'm very excited about this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So with that, we will move on to other business. Does anyone have any other business? No one has any other business. Commissioner Stebbins.
I would just like to mention something. Another action that Bernalillo County Commission took Tuesday night was to amend our resolution that concerning ABCGC and the Behavioral Health Initiative. So I think, as most people know, the County Commission did pass a resolution several years ago that all funding from the behavioral health tax would come through the subcommittee process of the ABCGC, and then funding proposals would then be voted on by this board. So, but we have found over the last couple of years that when this board doesn't meet, that unreasonably delays consideration by the county commission and implementation of those programs. So we have amended that just to say that when there is county funding that is to be considered by this board and the meeting is canceled, it does go directly to the county commission for approval. Again, this is in no way meant to circumvent the process that has been established, but there have been several instances over the last couple of years where these meetings are not held, and so we do want to move forward with that funding. So just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess what I'd like is for next meeting, maybe we could get a report back from Mr. Rayal and Ms. Morgas-Baca about the sort of the preliminary discussions where they are. So let's just kind of keep our eye on this so it doesn't fall through the cracks again.
Thank you. And I just want to add two things. One of them being after Commissioner Stebbins' comments about the ABCGC meeting and sometimes not meeting, we've been meeting for the past, the committee's been established for a while. Initially, I think the committee was meeting, I think, semi-annually, And then, I think that it was kind of important that we partnered with the county. I know Commissioner Quesada, we talked about this initially when we first came into office about how important this committee is. We established it to be a monthly meeting, and then as a result, then the behavioral health dollars it was decided that they would flow through this committee, which I think is ultimately important, and the collaboration is important. But we did have the discussion amongst others, just talking about how we make sure that we get the attendance here, because in order to move forward, we realize that the county is the one that's ultimately responsible for the dollars, but if we do want to have our say, we really need to ensure that we have a quorum. I don't know if that's via having an alternate for each of the counselors or what, but I think you're exactly right. It's important. It's important business. Last item is I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I can't believe it's next week. Everybody enjoy themselves for the holiday and be safe, and let's all count our blessings. So next meeting we have is December 20th, 5 p.m. in these chambers. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.